Hello everyone and welcome to my The Bold Fans channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. According to The Bold and the Beautiful BNB spoilers, Bill Spencer, Don Diamont, and Katie Logan Spencer, Heather Tom, may have just disclosed their next cause of strife. Katie and Bill's romantic reunion has been going well for a time, but will Spencer, Crew Morrow, and Melissa Dillon's, Sydney Bullock, relationship may present complications? Katie laughed at the prospect of Dillon falling in love with Will, and was concerned when she discovered Dillon was a long-standing fan of the Spencers. Dillon explained her fascination, claiming that she read a lot of magazines growing up and was inspired by the Spencer clan, but Katie believes she is manipulating things with dollar signs in her eyes. BNB watchers are aware that Katie is still pulling for Electra Forrester, Linnea Grace, and Will's future, but Bill has a different perspective. Bill believes it would be better if Will could break away from the overly emotional Forrester and move on with his life. That's why Bill was overjoyed when Wyatt Spencer, Darren Brooks, told him about Will's new hottie. Bill doesn't blame Dillon for previously living in her car, and he doesn't think she's a gold digger, at least not yet. Instead, Bill is thrilled to meet Dillon and enjoys the thought of her assisting Will in letting go of Electra. Of course, Bill may change his opinion after Katie shares her perspective on the problem, but he may also jump to Dillon's defense. Bill could argue that Katie's desire for Will and Electra's reconciliation clouds her judgment. Perhaps Bill will think Dillon is a nice girl who can improve Will's life. Bill might be impressed by Dillon's long-held admiration for the Spencer family. Maybe Bill will tell Katie that the Spencers have created a name for themselves over the years and pretend as if Dillon's fandom comes as no surprise. Dillon has 2 jobs and pays her own bills, so Bill may not regard her as a money-hungry manipulator like Katie. In fact, Bill may push Will to lavish Dillon with expensive gifts and treat her well, as that is what all of Spencer's money is for. Katie received an entire fashion house as a wedding gift, so Bill may not mind Will treating Dillon well and making her happy if their romance blossoms. It's easy to see how Bill and Katie could become completely at odds about Dillon, which may become a major source of conflict in their marriage. According to The Bold and the Beautiful spoilers, Katie and Bill's relationship may suffer as a result of how everything plays out, so keep an eye out for any unpleasant developments. Bill Spencer was always a man who took what he wanted. In the boardrooms of Spencer Publications, in the bedrooms of innumerable women who had crossed his path, and in the intricate knot of family relationships that defined his life in Los Angeles, he moved with the same unwavering power. But on this particular evening, while standing in the living room of the house he lived with Katie Logan, he felt something unusual, the ground shifting beneath him. Katie sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped securely in her lap, her face etched with the same calm resolve that had previously made her a powerful presence at Forrester Creations. The soothing light from the table lamp did nothing to soften the lines around her mouth. The air between them felt heavy, dense with a kind of silence that could only be achieved by years of shared history. "I can't keep doing this, Bill," she admitted at last. Her voice was firm, but there was a tremble underlying it, the kind caused by holding something back for too long. "Will is my son. Dillon is now part of a family. And the decisions we're making about their future aren't purely business. They're about the type of guys they're going to be." Bill turned away from the window, the city lights of Los Angeles shimmering behind him like scattered diamonds. He had poured himself a scotch earlier but had not touched it. The glass was forgotten on the side table. "They are young, Katie. They are still figuring things out. You handle this as if it were a permanent sentence." "It is not a sentence." Katie's eyes blazed. "Will has experienced more than most adults. The identity crisis, the years of feeling like he didn't fit in, the never-ending tug-of-war between those who claim to love him. Dillon has been a stabilizing factor. He is grounded. He's kind. He's the only person who doesn't see Will as a problem to be solved." Bill's jaw tightened. He had never been comfortable with the concept of anyone, especially another young man, becoming the focus of Will's universe. He had never tried to hide his protectiveness, which bordered on possessiveness. "Dillon's fine. I am not suggesting he isn't. But Will need more than comfort. He needs a challenge. He needs to understand where he came from. Spencer's blood rushes via his veins, whether he likes it or not. And that entails duties. Katie stood up carefully. She strolled to the mantel and laid her hands on the cool marble, glancing at a portrait of Will taken years ago, when his face still reflected the unabashed openness of youth. You keep referring about Spencer blood as if it were fate. It is not. It is a name. And names can be hefty. They can crush individuals if the persons carrying them do not have the necessary support. The argument had been brewing for weeks. It had begun with a brief talk about college applications, if Will should take a gap year, and the potential of Dylan moving in more permanently after his current apartment lease expired. From there, it had spiraled into the deeper questions that had always lurked beneath the surface of their marriage. What kind of parents they were, what kind of future they were shaping for the young people living under their roof, and whether the love that had once bound Bill and Katie together was strong enough to withstand the clash of values. Bill was never a traditional father. His connection with Will had been tough since the beginning. Paternity revelations, custody fights, Brooke Logan's long shadow, and the never-ending turmoil that seemed to accompany every member of the Logan and Spencer families. Katie had been the consistent one, the one who came up and listened when Will needed to talk about things that perplexed him. Bill had brought protection, opportunity, and the resources that could open doors. However, he had never mastered the ability to sit in calm locations where a young person could be observed without being judged. Dylan had filled those voids. He had come into their lives practically by accident, as a buddy of Will's who eventually evolved into something more. Not a romantic partner, at least not yet, albeit Katie sensed the possibility lingered between the two young men, but a presence that offered peace. Dylan listened. He posed inquiries without demanding responses. He made Will giggle in a way that reminded Katie of the boy he used to be, before the weight of adult expectations fell on his shoulders. Bill viewed things differently. He noticed a distraction. He saw a young guy who lacked the motivation and fire that had propelled Bill from a difficult childhood to the heights of success in journalism. He was concerned that Will would settle, that he would choose comfort over grandeur, and that the sharp edges that defined a Spencer would be polished away by too much tenderness. "You're making this into something it's not," Bill remarked, his voice low and frustrated. "I'm not trying to force Will into anything he doesn't want. I'm making sure he has options. Real options. The type that come with a name like Spencer, as well as the education and connections that name can buy." Katie turned to face him. What if his preferred option is a tranquil life? What if he prefers to study something that does not lead to a corner office? What if he wants to make a life with someone who views him as a person rather than a legacy? Question hung between them. Bill did not respond immediately. He approached the side table, picked up the scotch, and took a long sip. The burn from the alcohol did nothing to relieve the pressure in his chest. Their marriage has always been a study of opposites. Katie had entered his life after years of turmoil, following Ridge and Brooke, and the never-ending cycle of passion and betrayal that seemed to define the Forrester and Logan worlds. She had offered something unique. Stability, honesty, and a moral clarity that Bill both admired and found confining. They had created something meaningful together. They had shared a home, raised a child, and endured scandals and public scrutiny. But the foundation has always been based on a delicate balance. Bill's need for control and Katie's desire for emotional truth were never entirely reconciled. In recent months, the equilibrium has begun to shift. Will's future had become a flashpoint. Every debate regarding education, career options, and housing arrangements seems to reveal deeper fracture lines. Katie wanted Will to be free to experiment, make errors, and choose a route that felt real even if it did not appear remarkable on paper. Bill craved structure. He desired achievement. He desired success that could be measured and exhibited. Dylan had become a symbol of that division. To Katie, he symbolized the prospect of a different type of manhood, one based on empathy rather than domination. To Bill, he represented a soft alternative that threatened to lure Will away from the harsh realities of the world. "I love Will," Bill admitted finally. You understand that. I've done everything I can to protect him and offer him a place in our family. But I'm not going to sit back and watch him squander his advantages because he's terrified of the pressure that comes with them. Katie's eyes welled up with tears, but she held them back. It is not fear. Self-awareness. Will has spent many years attempting to figure out who he is. The last thing he needs is another set of expectations telling him who he should be. She approached him, near enough for him to see her tiredness. We are meant to be a team, Bill. We are supposed to work this out together. But every time I attempt to talk about what Will needs, you turn it into a debate over ambition. And every time you do that, I get the impression that you are putting the Spencer empire ahead of our son. Bill pressed the glass down with more force than was necessary. That's not fair. Is it? Katie raised her voice for the first time. You're constantly talking about legacy. You discuss what it means to be a Spencer. But you rarely discuss what it means to be a father who prioritizes his child's happiness over his own definition of success. The pause was longer this time. An automobile horn sounded softly in the distance. The city kept moving, unconcerned with the private fracture occurring in this room. Bill ran his hand through his hair. In that moment, he appeared older, as if the weight of years and choices had settled on his shoulders. I don't know how to do it any other way, Katie. I accomplished everything I have by refusing to settle, by pressing, by demanding more from myself and others around me. That is how I survived. That's how I became the guy capable of providing Will with the life he has. And I'm grateful for that, Katie replied, her tone softening. I am. However, survival is not the same as living. Will doesn't have to survive in the same manner you did. He needs to live. He needs space to breathe. She sat down again, the fight leaving her. Dylan is not the enemy. He's the only person that makes Will feel as if he doesn't need to perform. If we push that away because it does not fit some preconceived notion of Spencer's destiny, we will lose him, not simply to another city or work path. We're going to lose the part of him that still believes in us. Bill glanced at her. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to entertain the thought that she might be correct. The thought was unpleasant. It forced him to reassess the structure of his own life, the never-ending drive, the conviction that power was measured in dominance, and the assumption that love and control were somehow synonymous. He imagined Will as a young and uncertain child, staring up at him with eyes longing for something Bill had never quite figured out how to provide. He recalled the times he had been missing, when he had preferred a deal or a disagreement over a nice evening at home. He remembered how Will's face brightened up when Dylan entered a room, the easy laughter that followed, and the lack of tension that so often existed between father and son. "What do you want me to do?" Bill inquired. The inquiry wasn't rhetorical. It conveyed a genuine, albeit reluctant, readiness to listen. Katie gazed at him for a long time. "I want you to quit approaching Will's future as a corporate strategy. I want you to sit down with him, really sit down, and ask him what he wants without knowing what you expect to hear. And I want you to create room for Dylan in this family without seeing him as a threat to the brand." Bill exhaled gently. "That's not nothing you're asking." "I know," Katie said quietly. "But our marriage cannot survive if we continue to pull in opposite directions on the most important issue. Will isn't a project. He's our son. And if we can't agree on how to love him, all else we've built will crumble." The words fell between them like a verdict. Bill approached the sofa and sat down next her, close but not touching. The space between their bodies felt larger than the few inches of cushioning. "I don't want to lose this," he explained. "What we've got. Even when it's difficult." Katie raised her palm toward his, then paused. "Nor do I. But desiring isn't enough if we can't figure out how to get through this." They remained silent for a time. The argument had not concluded anything neatly. There were no major statements or abrupt leaps in viewpoint that wiped years of accumulated differences. There was just the realization that the ground had moved, and that the marriage they had constructed would either adapt or crumble beneath the weight of the decisions that lay ahead. The tension persisted throughout the next few days. Just changed shape. Bill made a clumsy, imperfect attempt to question Will about his intentions without instantly shifting the subject to business or prestige. Katie looked carefully, hopeful yet skeptical, knowing that development in a guy like Bill is slow and frequently incomplete. Dylan maintained a modest presence, neither imposing himself on the family nor withdrawing from it. Will, for his part, sensed tension between his parents. He said little about it, but his awareness was evident in the way he negotiated discussions, the way he occasionally looked between Bill and Katie as if looking for a sign that the storm had passed. He spoke more candidly with Dylan, confiding in him things he couldn't yet tell either parent: worry about the future, dread of disappointing those he cared about, and a secret optimism that there could be a way forward that didn't require him to choose between authenticity and belonging. One evening, weeks after the argument in the living room, Bill discovered Katie in the kitchen. She was brewing tea, a familiar routine for a woman who had learned to create small pockets of peace in a chaotic life. He stood in the doorway for a bit, observing her, recalling the early days of their relationship, when sharing a space felt like a miracle after so much stress. "I talked to Will today," he said. Katie looked up. "And?" "He intends to take a year. Travel a little. Consider volunteering someplace. He isn't sure about college yet." Katie waited as he stated, "I need time to figure out who I am without the noise." Bill's voice sounded quieter than normal. "I did not enjoy it. I still don't quite comprehend it. But I assured him that I would back him, so long as he remains secure. As long as he keeps talking to us." Katie put the kettle down. She moved across the kitchen and laid her hand on his arm. "That's a start." "It's not everything," Bill conceded. "I am still going to push. I'm still going to desire more for him than he does for himself." "That's who I am," Katie responded. "And I'll continue to battle for the space he needs to grow into himself. That's who I am." They stood there, two people who had loved each other through storms, scandals, and the gradual erosion of assurance, admitting the space that yet existed between them. The marriage was not mended. The questions surrounding Will and Dylan's future had not been answered definitively. But for the first time in a long time, the prospect of finding a path forward, messy, imperfect, and shared, felt less like a pipe dream and more like a decision they might still be able to make. Outside, the city lights continued to sparkle. Inside, the task of keeping a family together continued, one unpleasant conversation at a time. In the glistening high-rise that housed the Spencer enterprise, the air between Bill and Katie Spencer had become thick with unspoken anxiety. What had started as a hard-won second chance at love, rekindled amid family issues and sealed with a spontaneous vow exchange witnessed by their closest circle, now felt brittle, as if the foundation they had created was crumbling beneath the weight of their son's decisions. Will Spencer, their only child together, stood at the center of the schism, his growing bond with the enigmatic Dylan pulling the couple in opposite directions and forcing them to confront long-buried differences about protection, independence, and the kind of future they wanted for the young man they both adored. Katie wandered restlessly through their shared home's big living room, her mind replaying recent conflicts. She had always been the more reserved of the two when it came to Will's emotions. The wounds from previous upheavals, Luna's manipulations, the complex web of family loyalties, and the way romantic entanglements had nearly pulled everything apart, remained visible. Dylan's abrupt appearance in Will's life sparked every mother instinct she had. The young woman had emerged at a vulnerable time, bringing solace following Will's sad breakup with Electra, and what began as friendship had swiftly evolved into something more intimate. Overnight stays, late-night discussions, the way Will's eyes lit up when he mentioned her. All of this unsettled Katie. She noticed red flags where others might perceive young curiosity. Dylan's past appeared unclear, her relationships intricate, and her effect over Will became more evident. Katie's recent heated first meeting with the woman only increased her concerns. Dylan's demeanor, carefully calculated answers, and avoided questions about her history convinced Katie that her kid was likely to face heartbreak or worse.